Before Johannesburg became a bustling metropolis, before towers of steel touched the Highveld sky and millions of people called it home, the land where the city now stands was a quiet, rolling expanse of grasslands. This is the Highveld, its landscape shaped by wind, rain, and time. The earliest communities who roamed this region long before the 1800s were societies who understood the rhythm of the land. Among them were the San, whose rock art and hunting trails still whisper ancient stories across the valleys of Gauteng. In the 12th to 14th centuries, parts of the Highveld fell under the influence of powerful kingdoms such as Mapungubwe and, later, the Bokanai settlements. Their descendants farmed cattle, cultivated sorghum, and traded across the region. The land was not empty, it was full of life, movement, and history. By the early 1800s, the Highveld became a contested space. The Difak-Mfecane period swept across southern Africa, as migrations, conflict, and consolidation reshaped territories. The arrival of Mzilikazi and his Ndebele kingdom in the 1820s further transformed the region. They established control over parts of the Highveld, moving through what is today northern Johannesburg and the surrounding plains. By the 1840s and 1850s, the land had become home to scattered Tswana-speaking communities, pastoral families, and Boer farmers who traveled north during the Great Trek. These Boers established small farms with simple homesteads, not knowing that beneath their feet lay one of the greatest mineral treasures in world history. In 1853, a prospector named Peter Jacob Murray found traces of gold in the Jikski River. Others found small flakes too, but no one yet understood what lay deeper underground. Johannesburg had not yet been imagined. There were no streets, no lights, no empire, only open land. But everything changed in 1886, the year that reshaped South Africa forever. Just northwest of present-day Germiston, on a farm named Langlaagte, an Australian prospector named George Harrison picked up a rock that shimmered strangely in the sun. It contained gold not washed down a river, but embedded in rock. This was the beginning of the discovery that would build a city, attract the world, and alter the course of South African and global history. That moment, that single glint of gold, opened the doorway to what would soon become Johannesburg, a city built on ambition, struggle, greed, dreams, and survival. But before the skyscrapers, before the mines, before the rush of 100,000 people entering the Rand in only a few years, there was this land. Quiet. Waiting. And everything was about to change. The year is 1886. The ridge of the Witwatersrand is a hive of activity. News spreads quickly across the Boer republics, across southern Africa, across the oceans. Gold has been found. Within weeks, thousands pour into the new diggings: miners, gamblers, merchants, criminals, engineers, adventurers, and hopefuls from every continent. The South African Republic Czar government sends two surveyors, Johannes Meyer and Johannes Rissik. Their instructions: establish a formal settlement near the gold fields. These two men would give Johannesburg its name. What began as a few tents quickly transformed into a town of thousands. By 1887, the dusty mining camp became a proclaimed town with the first streets: Commissioner Street, Market Street, and Ferreira's Camp. The scent of dust, dynamite, and sweat filled the air. Makeshift saloons, trading posts, and wooden shacks sprung up overnight. Johannesburg wasn't built on stability. It was built on urgency. Gold on the Rand wasn't like gold found in rivers. It was deep underground, locked in quartz reefs. Extracting it required heavy machinery, engineering expertise, and enormous capital. This opened the door for foreign money, especially British financiers known as Randlords. Men like Barney Barnato, Cecil John Rhodes, Alfred Byte, Herman Eckstein and J.B. Robinson built mining empires that extracted unimaginable wealth from the ground. They erected headgear frames, pumping stations, stamp mills, and shafts drilled hundreds of meters deep. The population exploded, 1,886 a few hundred people. 1,890 over 50,000. 1,896 nearly 100,000. It was one of the fastest growing cities in the world. But the wealth of the gold fields was built by the labor of thousands of African workers recruited from across southern Africa, from Mozambique, Basutoland, Bechuanaland, Zululand, and the Cape. They lived in overcrowded compounds under harsh conditions, often working 12-hour shifts deep underground. African labor fueled the wealth of the Rand, even as they were denied rights in the new city. In 1892, Johannesburg got electricity even before London's West End. By 1895, trams were introduced. The city was modernizing at a breathtaking pace. Yet beneath this energetic growth was tension. White miners demanded political rights. The Boer government under President Paul Kruger resisted British interference. The British desired control over the gold fields, the biggest financial resource in the region. This growing conflict over wealth, control, and power set the stage for the next major turning point, the South African War, Anglo-Boer War. Johannesburg was no longer just a mining town. It had become the heart of a global struggle. Tensions between the British Empire and the Boer republics reached breaking point in 1899. The British launched a full invasion of the Tsar, and Johannesburg became a strategic prize. In May 1900, British forces entered Johannesburg with little resistance. Boer forces had already evacuated the city. For the first time, Johannesburg came under British control. After the war ended in 1902, the city entered a new phase: reconstruction and expansion. Immigrants from Europe arrived in waves. Indian, Chinese, and African laborers filled the mines and built infrastructure. The Chinese labor experiment of 1904 to 1910, where over 60,000 Chinese workers were imported for mining, remains one of Johannesburg's least discussed episodes. By 1904, Johannesburg's population surpassed 155,000. This period also marked the birth of major Johannesburg suburbs: Hillbrow, Doornfontein, Braamfontein, Jeppestone, Mayfair. A new kind of city was taking shape, one of electric trams, brick buildings, music halls, and corner cafes. Yet it was also becoming a city of deep racial divides. Segregationist laws emerged long before apartheid, with the 1904 bubonic plague outbreak used to justify forcibly removing black residents from central Johannesburg to Klipspruit, the precursor of Soweto. Every stone of Johannesburg in this era carried contradiction, modernity and inequality, innovation and control. By 1913, the city was one of the world's greatest gold producers. The mines ran day and night, and Johannesburg's skyline rose higher each year. This rapid transformation laid the foundation for the city's next major shift, the birth of industrial South Africa. By the start of World War I in 1914, Johannesburg was the industrial heart of South Africa. Gold production soared, and new industries emerged: steel, manufacturing, banking, and rail transport. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange grew into one of the world's most important mining exchanges. Banks, insurance companies, and engineering firms headquartered themselves in the city. But Johannesburg was also becoming deeply segregated. In 1913, the Natives Land Act limited black Africans to only 7% of the country's land. This law, along with municipal restrictions, led to overcrowding near the city. Between 1918 and 1930, Johannesburg built and expanded major townships, Orlando 1931. Western Native Township 1919. Alexandra founded 1912 but expanded in the 1920s. The locations were designed as labor reservoirs supporting the mines and industries, yet far removed from the city's white neighborhoods. Meanwhile, Johannesburg's cultural life flourished. The 1920s and 30s brought jazz halls, cinemas, shebeens, and black intellectual movements. Sophiatown emerged as one of the most vibrant multiracial, artistic communities in Africa, home to writers, musicians, boxers, and political thinkers. By 1936, the population passed 400,000. But the seeds of apartheid were already forming. The white government created laws that slowly tightened control on movement, housing, and political expression. Black migrants had to carry passes. Townships became overcrowded. Poor mining conditions created cycles of poverty. Johannesburg was advancing, but not equally. The city's prosperity, glamour, and modernization ran parallel with the deepening inequality that would soon explode into full apartheid in 1948. In 1948, the National Party formally enacted apartheid. Johannesburg became the centerpiece of its racial engineering and the center of resistance. One of the most dramatic social engineering projects in history unfolded as the apartheid government sought to reshape Johannesburg by force. Between 1953 and 1961, Sophiatown, Martindale, and Western Native Township were destroyed. Families were forced into new segregated townships such as Meadowlands. The destruction of Sophiatown remains one of the darkest urban events in South African history, a cultural heart surgically removed in the name of racial purity. At the same time, Soweto southwestern townships grew rapidly. What began as Orlando expanded into a massive city of its own, Pimbley, Naildi, Deep Kloof, Meadowlands, Zola, Rockville, Mafalo, Mapetla. By 1970, Soweto's population reached approximately 800,000. In the city center, white-only areas expanded: Sandton, Houghton, Rosebank, Randburg, and Bedford View. Black workers were allowed in the city during the day but forced to return to townships at night. In this environment, resistance movements grew. Johannesburg became home to the ANC's underground cells, Pan-Africanist movements, and student organizations. It was in Soweto where the world witnessed one of the most defining events in modern African history, the Soweto uprising of June 16, 1976. What began as a peaceful student march against the enforcement of Afrikaans as a medium of instruction turned into a nationwide revolt. The photograph of 13-year-old Hector Pietersen, carried by Mbuyisa Makubo, with Antoinette Sithole running beside them, became an international symbol of the brutality of apartheid. Johannesburg was no longer just a mining city. It had become the epicenter of a global moral battle. Throughout the 1980s, protests, strikes, and uprisings intensified. The apartheid government responded with forced states of emergency, detentions, and censorship. Yet resistance continued. The mines slowed. Capital fled. And pressure mounted from the international community. Finally, on February 11, 1990, Nelson Mandela walked out of Victor Verster prison. When he addressed the nation from Johannesburg's City Hall, the world listened. In 1994, South Africa held its first democratic election. Johannesburg transformed again, this time, politically and spiritually. The dawn of democracy brought hope, challenges, and transformation. Johannesburg entered a new era no longer defined by apartheid, but by opportunity, migration, and reinvention. The city became the economic powerhouse of Africa. Yet the transition was difficult. White flight from the inner city caused urban decay. Crime surged. Buildings emptied. Hillbrow and Yeoville transformed overnight. But Johannesburg adapted. By the 2000s, major redevelopment projects reshaped the skyline. Nelson Mandela Bridge 2003. Sandton City expansion. Gautrain Rail System 2010. Rejuvenation of Mabonange. New town precinct development. Johannesburg became the wealthiest city in Africa, generating 16% of South Africa's GDP. Immigrants from across Africa brought new cultures into the city from Ethiopia, Somalia, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Ghana, Congo, and beyond. Johannesburg became a mosaic of African identity. Challenges remain: inequality, crime, unemployment, and migration pressures. But Johannesburg continues to reinvent itself. From a quiet Highveld landscape to a global city, the transformation has taken only 140 years, a blink in historical time. Johannesburg is a city built on gold, but sustained by people, miners, migrants, activists, dreamers, and survivors. This is Johannesburg, a city with a past that shaped a nation, and a future still being written.